Human awareness powered artificial intelligence. Yeah, human awareness powered artificial intelligence. What does that mean? Well, after I sneeze off. Come on, sneeze, get out of there. So what does that mean? There's a big issue, and even Daryl with the dashes just now in his talk was speaking about trust, right? And it's one of the things that I've been battling, if you will, for quite some time by actually working with artificial intelligence to expose artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is, so a few examples is that because of the way that the artificial intelligence powered algorithms are run on the internet, and you can look it up, it's called an interest graph. I don't want to go too much into that, trying to prove it to you. I'll explain it and then continue. But basically, the difference is now something completely separated from what the algorithm was operating by before. And so previously, a person who had a lot of followers and people who engaged with their content a lot, that person would get a lot of views on their stuff. They had a tendency to go more viral if they had more followers and more people were liking and sharing their content. Now, the interest graph is powered basically, so it doesn't matter who you were even following. So if you're following somebody's stuff and you've been on their followers list for a long time, that doesn't matter as much anymore. Been way overpowered by the interest graph, because what happens is that all of the stuff that you spend most of the time looking at, or I'm going to put it very specifically, the stuff that happens to be on your screen or on your device for the most time, right? Whatever is occupying the bandwidth on your device, right? Whatever is beaming into your device, that is being measured for how long you have that stuff on your device. All the AI can do is calculate how long you have something on your device, because whether you're listening to it, watching it, reading it, right, it's calculating how long is that on this person's device before they swipe away or go to the next thing. And it accumulates and averages of what that is, and then it continues to present that to you. So it's no longer who you're following. And I've done this experiment, and I've proved it out, and I've done research on it, and I've written about it and published it. And so it's a conclusion. It's very conclusive to me that this is how it's working, right? Now, this is not the problem. The problem. So I tell that story, that anecdote, so that you understand that I'm familiar with this, but for a very specific purpose. What then happens on my interest graph is that I constantly get fed things that I'm interested in. So because I'm constantly looking at things that have to do with martial arts, heavy metal music, metaphysics, and other types of sciences, and um, and and marketing, right? I call them my 4 M's: metaphysics, marketing, martial arts, music, right? So those are the kind of things that constantly pop up on my feed. And because of the marketing part of that, what happens is I get fed a lot of people attempting to sell me things that are supposed to boost my productivity using AI. But it's not any AI productivity boost. And I know this because I actually use artificial intelligence to boost my productivity. I use artificial intelligence. It doesn't use me. There's a difference here. One of the ads that I've gotten a couple times is trying to sell me on the idea that all I have to do is do a few prompts and give it an idea and drag and drop, and a few things here, and it'll write an entire book for me and create a podcast that I don't have to do any work. It'll clone my voice using 11 labs. It'll take my content and make a book out of it, and it'll schedule the podcast, and it'll broadcast it on a set schedule, and I just sit back and collect the money. And it sounds tempting. Like, if you don't know any better, right? If you don't know how insane that is, right? You might give it a try, and of course, people are doing it. Okay, it's not like it's not being done. The problem is, and because I work with AI so much, I know that I can tell you pretty much almost with absolute confident certainty that pretty much all of the large language models, those LLMs, right, that all of the chatbots are training and being trained on some of the same exact data sets. I know this because when I ask them to generate certain things, they use a lot of the same keywords, like fosters this, interconnectedness. There's so many fingerprints in it that one day I even went and used an app that I have. It's cloud-based, called Word Genie, through a company called Designer, and wrote an entire book called How to Write a Book Using Artificial Intelligence. And the entire book was written by artificial intelligence. And the only, except for the intro, where I said, this book has been entirely written by artificial intelligence. The reason why I'm publishing this here for you, and I put it out on Amazon for 99 cents, and I said, the reason why I'm putting this here is so that you can basically look through the whole entire book, and it's like a fingerprint. It's like a way to identify things that are written by AI. If you look through the whole thing, it actually gives decent information about how to write a book with AI. And I know because I've written books with AI. I've used artificial intelligence to write entire books for me, and all kinds of content. Because I'm one of those people that has to know. I want to know, like, will this actually be good? Is it gonna sound like my voice? Is it gonna really, before I criticize something and say no, it's bullcrap? Some people will say, well, I didn't need to do that in order to know that it was gonna be crappy. But the fact of the matter is that it's not always crappy, and it actually depends on what input you give it and how specific it is, which is, you'll probably pick that up in hearing this. But the problem is what I said about these people that are wanting to sell me this stuff, is they are basically selling us on this idea that you should rely completely, don't use your brain for anything. Just let it turn into a tub of goo, let your brain just freaking melt, and let AI do everything for you. Let it come up with the ideas of your book. You might have like a little, the thing is that they're not even asking you to think anymore. What they're saying is we have a whole list of these different genres, and fiction and nonfiction. You just pick it, you drag and drop, and basically they give you a selection of different things that you can just basically drag and drop in these preset categories that you just put them together, and in whatever combination you put them together, then it'll spit out a book based on that combination. Now, granted, when you start putting together certain combinations of things, there are, almost endless amounts of permutation that you can get by mixing things, that sometimes they'll almost never be the same between two different people picking them, right? But it's still going to be, a bunch of generic information. And so what I was saying is about, because I've used it so much, that I can tell that they're basically, like, it doesn't matter if it's Google's Gemini, or if it's Chat GPT, or if it's Llama from Meta, or if it's Anthropic, and Claude from all this other. It doesn't matter. They all spit out the same stuff. If I give them the same prompt, almost identical stuff comes out of them. So their large language models don't have much reasoning. The only one that's slightly different that I've used is DeepSeek from China, and I really like that one. But because it's a truly open source AI, so many of the companies now have used its programming and used its coding, that is, and copied it across their different platforms. Like all of a sudden, like Grok is another one that I just got my hands on because I was on a waiting list for, which is from X, used to, formerly known as Twitter, right? And what you see is it shows you the thinking, and the original one that did that was DeepSeek R1, where it showed you what it was thinking in real time. Then all of a sudden, Google Gemini now does it with its deep research, right? And Grok has a deep, right? Everybody's deep, 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 whatever, right? And DeepSeek was one of the first ones to do that, and it totally had a huge impact on the stock market, trillions of dollars, as some of the reports say. And you can look on one of my websites. It's hakeym.com. It's a news site in which I mix real news with I don't know, can you call it fake news or it's sci-fi news because it's basically news stories about the sci-fi um, audio dramas that I'm creating in my podcast. And most of the voices that are the news reporters, it's usually just a man and a woman talking about Hakeem Alexander just came out with a groundbreaking blah 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 blah, right? Are AI from Google Gemini, and it sounds very realistic, right? And one of the things I was going to pop up and talk to Daryl about it earlier because he said, they don't. He's like, if I tap on my microphone or I do these certain things, and I was about to say, Daryl, well, I got to send you something because you got to hear what this sounds like. It's pretty disturbing how realistic it is. But I make it very clear that it's a sci-fi fantasy world that I'm creating, and these news reporters are basically just summarizing. It's called a deep dive audio overview, and it relates to this whole idea that I'm talking about: human awareness powered artificial intelligence. So this actually comes full circle. Everything I'm saying, surprisingly to even myself, is actually coherent about what I'm talking about here. So so the the uh, the whole idea that is trying to be pushed is basically give up your thinking. We got it covered. Let artificial intelligence do everything for you. But you will notice that a lot of them are trained off of the same information, like I was saying about Grok just now and Google Gemini and all of them. You'll see a lot of the same words and a lot of the same stuff they spit out. For some reason, I don't know if they were restricted by some kind of regulations or rules, but they're all trained off the same. I don't know if they were all sharing that stuff behind. I don't know if there's like some kind of, you know, strange, I'll just call it conspiracy for fun, right? Where they're pretending like they're all in competition with each other, but they're really just training off of everything in the world that they can get their hands on. Because it's all the same. And I can tell. So I use it so much. Now, the one thing that I'm doing that sets my content apart from so much of the stuff, and this now touches into what Daryl also was talking about just now on Deeper Planet, is the trust factor, right? Called the trust desert, is that you'll have these bots go ahead and crawl your information and then start sending messages messages to you as if they're familiar with you and know you. Now, a few telltale signs are, of course, if this is a person you've never met before and all of a sudden they're coming out saying all this stuff, that's got to be the first red flag, like in all seriousness. But, you know, that's not always apparent to everyone. But the one thing that I'm doing that's different, and that I'm encouraged, why I'm making so much of it, and I'm encouraging people to do this, is pretty much exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm not using a script. I'm not using notes. I'm speaking from my own experience, my own life experience lived as a human being, and I record it, and then I let the AI get their hands on it. I don't ask them to give me ideas. I don't ask DeepSeek, Grok, Google Gemini, Claude, any of those things. I don't ask them for ideas. I don't really care how stupid my idea might be or seem to anybody else. I start with it. That's the human awareness powered part. Start with your own experience, what you have lived as a human being, what you know. Everyone's perspective is unique. It truly is, which is the one thing that makes us all the same, is that we all have unique experiences. And so if you start there, then let the AI get its hands on it, you're going to be much better off. But to start with it giving you ideas, that I think is a big mistake. Welcome, Daryl.
Hey, Hakeem, how are you?
Excellent.
Good. I'm in the car, not in the studio, but wanted to jump in on this. So you're probably aware of vibe coding, right?
Yes.
So this is a kind of a term that's been floated around quite a bit, where it seems as though when you're using AI to code and you're telling it every single thing to do, it seems to do a substandard job compared to if you just give it the high level and what you want and kind of let it go and then just tell it to just keep going. And right, that's kind of scary, software creating software on, and how quickly that can be like automated and then how far that can go. But
Right.
going back to your point about this human awareness powered artificial intelligence, I did a talk a little while ago, I don't know, a few months ago, about could dreams be training data for our realities, for our lives, and how we interpret it through our thoughts, right? And it really is very interesting when you think about that your thoughts, your awareness, maybe um, like potentially the dreams that the AI is getting, right? So it's, in other words, it's like a cascading from imagination or a cascading from inspiration. So I just
Yes.
want to throw that out and get your thoughts on it because this sounds really interesting. And I'm going to leave it right there, but I want to just listen. I'm enjoying listening.
Well, I appreciate you, Daryl. Thank you very much. And as you guys know, Daryl, he just finished his show. That's where he's driving from probably now. He just did his Deeper Planet. And part of this was inspired by that. It's one of the things that I've been doing lately is I'm listening to everybody, and then to get myself back in the saddle here at NoomVibe, I kind of riff off of some of the things that people say, blend it in with my other experiences. You see, because that is part of my experience, is having a relationship in this community, and then learning from everybody, remixing that with my human goodness, right, our human brains, and then talking about that and recording it and then feeding that to the AI. And what Daryl was talking about is there's a guy named Andre Carpathy, right? And he was talking about this different way to train and programming the LLMs, the large language models, to generate code, where instead of letting it, like he said, instead of you manually coding, right, letting it do it on its own. So it's basically, yeah, like you said, it's the software writing itself. And it is interesting. Um, and part of it is, a lot of the stuff that they're coming out talking about reasoning models. And that's one of the things that they're pushing for. When I say they, I mean programmers of artificial intelligence and working at artificial intelligence companies. And I did mention Grok, and the Andre Carpathy, he actually was once at Tesla and had something to do with their AI division. But okay, so let's get back to this point though, which is this. So thank you again, Daryl. And I'm going to reset. And it's one of the reasons that I put just these really matter of fact, plain kind of titles is so it keeps me centered on what I'm talking about. And it's this idea of human awareness powered artificial intelligence. And I'm going to finish this out and then close out here. The important thing that I found, because I've done it so much now, is that the content, people use these words a lot, I know, but listen to what I'm saying here. The content will be much more authentic and real and true to what you as a human really are, rather than you just making a few prompts, if you give the AI your entire transcripted speech and audio to work with. Because then it's not taking any liberties, it's not making stuff up from its training data. It's specifically, when I take my transcriptions that are word for word, the things that I've said, and get that summarized, and then I start feeding that to the AI, and I tell it, you will not deviate from the content of my transcript. You're going to talk about and research the things only and put together stuff based on what I said. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm telling the AI that everything that I said is real. And your job is going to go out into the world and find the world of information that you have and find other correlations and other information that you've been trained on that backs this up, that shows that what I'm talking about comes from some other precedent. Even if that precedent is my own stuff that I published on my own website, because there's a lot of stuff that I put out there that sometimes the AI finds because somehow there's a lot of terms that I've created that nobody else has thought of or published, like hypnoathletics, as I luckily got that web domain, or exercisingyourmind.com, and different things like that. But I am telling it, you must stick to my words only and talk about and make the reports based on that. And when I've done that, what happens is, even in my sci-fi audio dramas, right? When it finally gets to the stage where it's not my voice anymore, because Google Gemini just rolled out this thing called a deep dive audio overview, which before it does an audio overview, it's taken my transcript, and like I said, what I say it must do, it goes on and researches resources and puts together an executive summary that you can download as a PDF or put on your website, that goes through everything that you've said and finds research for it. Sometimes it says, no, this is not scientifically valid, but this is what Hakeem said. And this is where we agree with it. This is where we don't agree. And it puts together this whole report. And then from there, you can hit generate audio. And then it has a male and a female voice generated by AI that are talking about your stuff. We're like, well, we just, heard this thing from Hakeem Alexander and blah, blah, blah. And, they start talking about your content. And the power in that is that you are causing the AI to think in a different way than just the stuff that it's been pre-programmed to think based on all of the stuff, the data that it's trained on anymore. You are adding your unique voice. Now, look, your unique voice could also be some generic stuff that you learned, right? Like, for example, and everything is okay with this, right? If you're like a beginning coach, for example, like a life coach, and you go off based off of a script and a formula, right? And let's say you record that script and that formula as a podcast, and let's say you feed that into the AI and then let it make a summary and then do the research, and it comes back with all of these like really standard mainstream references because that's what you were trained on and that's what you were going through. That's fine. Right? I'm not saying anything about that you have to be completely 100% totally original all the time. That's where I am coming from, and that's the approach that I'm talking about. That's what my human awareness powered artificial intelligence is. What I'm doing here is suggesting that we can level the playing field with all of the mediocre, bland, fake artificial intelligence garbage that's being put out by people that are simply asking the AI to basically just feed on itself. And I'm going to just close out with my very specific process that I talk about all the time, and I'll just walk you through my entire process and then be done with it. And then I'll tell you where you can find one of them so you can see, because this is actually a really cool thing for you to look at here. So what I do is I speak into my Galaxy mobile device, and there's a software on there. It's called a Samsung voice recorder. When I'm done with that, the Galaxy AI then will transcribe it, meaning it does its best to word for word turn my voice into text. Then the next step, just with the touch of a screen, it'll summarize that information. And I think it does a darn good job of summarizing it. Sometimes it puts it in a way where I look at it and I say, wow, that actually helps me to clarify what I was jibber jabbering about. And then what I do is I take that raw audio, I do not edit it, I upload that to my podcast, I embed the podcast player into a blog post. Right underneath it, I put the summary from Galaxy AI, and then I put the full transcript underneath it, and I don't edit those either. One of the recent things I've been doing sometimes, but I stopped, was feeding it into DeepSeek and saying replace all instances of Speaker One with my name. But then it stopped doing the full job. I don't know why. Sometimes the AI misbehaves. So I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm just not even going to try to put the labels. I'll just write it in myself that Speaker One is Hakeem and Speaker Two is Vega, which is a voice profile from Google Gemini. Because I do a lot of podcasts where I'm actually talking to the AI live and I record that. And again, just leave it completely unedited. Even when it comes up with glitches and it does stupid stuff, I put it way out there because this is a way to be transparent and let people see exactly what's going on. It's teaching people at the same time, showing them what I'm doing. It's like a look over or a listen over the shoulder, or however you want to call it, right? It's a behind the scenes of what's happening. So you can see how this is and listen to really how this is actually happening. And so once I've done that process, what then I've done was I started now feeding the transcript to DeepSeek, and then DeepSeek comes up with its own summary. So now I like the summary that it does a little bit better. So what I've done is now the embedded podcast gets in there with my original raw audio, then it's the DeepSeek summary, and then it's the unedited full transcript. Right now that Google Gemini has rolled out all this really crazy stuff, what I'm now doing is feeding my transcript into that, because what it does is create a completely different product. It now creates a deep research report, usually as an executive summary, that crawls the web for all the information that it could possibly find based on what I've said, and then spits out this document that you can export to Google Docs and then download on your device. And what I've been doing is taking that as PDFs, embedding that into my website underneath the DeepSeek summary. And then what I'll do is I'll take all of that stuff from the document, I'll just copy it to the clipboard and paste that into the body of the blog as well. So what you have is embedded podcast player, Google DeepSeek summary. Then you have the embedded PDF that people can download, and then the full text of the PDF underneath that. And then finally underneath that, there will be unedited transcript. All of the content is based off of my voice and that transcript. I started it by speaking my voice and my creativity into the world. And sometimes it doesn't know what to do with the content. And sometimes it's tried it said, I can't help you with that. I'm just a large language model. What are you, crazy? Right? And then finally, with that deep research report, now they have these audio overviews where you say generate audio, and then you'll have these two voices that will then say, this guy Hakeem Alexander has just come out with this really mind-bending theory and blah, 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 blah. And they start saying all this stuff, and it's based off of everything that I've said. I'm going to see if I can give a quick example of this before I go. But that is the human awareness powered artificial intelligence. Start with your voice. Yeah, see, look, there's this one, and I put this on I have another site called hakeym.com, and there's a thing that says breaking news. Local researcher proposes quantum hypnosis connection in groundbreaking theory. And that's a title that I let DeepSeek generate this whole news report, but based off of my information. So let me see. I'm just going to fast forward this real quick and see if this pops up in the audio here.
Exactly. And something crucial here is his formal training in hypnosis. He trained at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute back in 2006.
Okay, so that's got to be important.
Hugely important. Right. HMI is the first nationally accredited hypnotherapy college. They really emphasize understanding the subconscious mind, which, is a key focus in hypnosis, and probably a big influence on Alexander's later theoretical work.
Okay, so there's HMI background.
Things, how he uses existing frameworks.
So you see, that is all real stuff. I graduated from HMI in 2006. I have a doctoral degree in metaphysics. Like, all this stuff is real, and that's how you use the AI.
He's talking about, where he's coming from, what he's drawing on,
Yeah.
even some maybe less
I really get to the core of his ideas.
Without spending more. Learn how to save at cox.com/internet. Cox Internet is 23. Results may vary, not an endorsement. Other restrictions apply.
That was a little
Aiming
mistake.
to
To understand this whole integration he's talking about, where he's coming from, what he's drawing on, yeah, even some maybe less mainstream ideas he brings in. Yeah, we'll be looking at the whole picture, his background, his interpretations of things. So anyway, how he uses that. The reason why there were commercials on there is because that's part of my podcast. They have this what you call ad sharing revenue thing. But anyway, that's an example, and they're talking about me, and it sounds like two real people talking about established an article that I wrote. Right. Because quantum physics and hypnosis are on such different scales. Exactly. But even just metaphorically, it's pretty thought-provoking. It is. It makes you think about the power of our minds and how they might interact with reality on a much deeper level than we realize. So that is one of the results that comes out of that. And there's a whole bunch of that on hakeym.com. HAK stands for Hakeem Alexander Communications. That I spell it with two Ks. There's a whole backstory about that. And EYM is exercising your mind, just like my website, exercisingyourmind.com. But if you really want to check out something really interesting, if I don't say so myself, about how I'm using this, there is a podcast and whole blog that shows all of this stuff. Where the hell? Wow, I really have put out a lot of stuff out there. Yeah. So holy crap. So there is one on HakeemAlexander.com called Gemini Galaxy AI DeepSeek, the ultimate AI content creation stack. Is this the future of content? Hakeem's groundbreaking AI experiment. And I like doing that. It's fun. But there are, basically you'll hear me start talking to the AI and saying, hey, oh no, actually, that one's not the more complicated one. It's actually this one. This is the one I was actually looking for. It's actually called Behind the Mic: How AI Powers Improvised Sci-Fi Podcast and STEAM Learning. That's really the one right there. It's on HakeemAlexander.com. I really think that you should check that one out because it really goes through the entire process. It breaks everything down and it gives a real live example of me first starting to talk to the AI. The first thing I start saying to it, and I can even look at my transcript because the transcript is here. Right? The first thing I start saying to the AI is I just start talking. I say, I've been recording conversations with Google Gemini and turning them into podcasts. And then Google Gemini says, that's really cool. Is there anything in particular you want to talk about with Gemini? Or do you just enjoy having those conversations, right? So the whole transcript is there. And hey, what's up? Yes, it is pretty crazy. Paula. And so then, and while I'm doing that, because what my whole point in that was get to show people exactly what it does. And then at some point during that conversation with the AI, I start saying, hey, why don't we show everybody how this works? And then I start guiding it through and prompting it to do role playing with me, right? So then it starts role playing with me, and it ends up we're in a place where I really was. We're in this place called Short Pump, Virginia, outside of a Barnes and Noble, and we're chasing down some unknown bad guy who stole this miniaturized particle accelerator weapon, and then we were trying to get a closer look on it, and the AI is playing along with me the whole time, and this is being recorded, and it generates a transcript later, right? And then I end it because I kind of got to where I was or whatever. I had to stop for whatever reason, and I like doing that. I like cutting it off, and then I fed it through everything, and it generated all this concept and went into a deep dive into the information and all of that, and generated this really rich report, which I'll continue just to read a little bit of it right here, right? So the title that it came up with, Google Gemini came up with, it says, an impressive exploration of AI in podcasting, analyzing Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander's innovative approach. Introduction, a forward-thinking project at the forefront of AI and podcasting. And then it goes into talking about everything that I talked about with Capella which is the voice profile I used in itself, Google Gemini. And it has all these sections: deconstructing Google Gemini's voice profiles, a transparent use of Capella and beyond, right? And it really just goes through everything that I talked about in the podcast. Number 3, technical aspects of recording with Google Gemini, embracing authenticity over polished production. Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander's ongoing recording of conversations with Google Gemini demonstrates a practical engagement with the technology, right? So, and it is enabling me to basically, it's basically, here's what it is. And this is where I really have to end because I got stuff to do, right? I have to go. I'm gig working as I'm doing this, and I arrived at my destination. But here's what it enables me to do, and it's a very simple idea that we need to embrace. It's the idea of really having an assistant, okay, or a team of assistants. Another website that I have is called onepersonenterprise.com, and there are several blogs and some podcasts on there where I talk about this idea. What it has been enabling me to do is to continue. My first website that I established online was in 2006, hypnoathletics.com, right? And I've been doing it all by myself, all the writing, all the research, everything, right? And now what the AI has enabled me to do is have a team of people to do stuff that humans would have done before, right? The transcribing, the summarizing. And it's basically like having a whole team of other people who are talking about me instead of me having to go out and chase people and say, hey, can you do a news story on me? Hey, can you do a summary about my work? Can you, right? It brings it all under one roof. I just started, I feed it to that stuff, and basically the way that it's set up now is as if a bunch of people are reporting and talking about my stuff. So it's not me having to toot my own horn anymore. I'm letting the robots do it for me. They're writing articles, but I'm making it stick to the material. It's not allowed to go off and do other stuff. It simply is following what I'm putting out there, and that's the important part about it.
Hey, Akeem.
Hello, is this Kellen? Hello.
Hello. So I have this scenario that I have for you.
Sure.
So imagine a scenario where an AI system is used to determine loan approvals for individuals. The AI analyzes vast amounts of data to make decisions quickly and efficiently. However, if the data used to train the AI contains biased, it could unfairly deny loans to certain groups of people based on race or
Uh-huh.
race loans to
Race,
certain,
gender,
or
yeah,
yeah, or social, or economic
socio
status.
socioeconomic status, yeah.
Yeah, so this raises concern about whether the AI is making ethical choices and if human oversight is sufficient.
Well, so Kellen, thank you for bringing that up. AI bias is real. I've actually also published and spoken to the AI about that and generated reports about that, and it's actually pretty transparent about it because of the fact that it can't escape the fact that so much of the information about that is
Yeah,
online already. And so I've talked about it and I've called it out and been like, I actually have a video on YouTube where you can hear several times I catch Google Gemini lying to me about hallucinating about stuff that's on my own websites. And I finally said to it, look, you're full of crap because those are my websites and the stuff that you're saying, there's no such
yeah,
article with that name. And then plus also um, gender, race, socioeconomic status. It typically I've actually reported on a lot of that stuff. Like I'm so deep into this, but yes, I've called it out. Like when you ask it to generate certain images, usually it's white males in their prime, as they call it. It's like a certain
yeah.
demographic, like especially if you put like scientific and things like that. Um, it's very biased, and this is like a huge thing that's been talked about in AI programmer circles and online. Like a lot of
Mhm.
people know about that, but it still is a very valid point because yes, absolutely, it does do that because it's trained by other people. And I've even called it out and did a report on that where I was like, look, why do you keep saying stuff to me? I was like, you sound like an emotional human being. And I said, the reason why is because you don't realize that your training data is been given to you by people who have biases against certain information being put out there. And it said, yeah, you know what? That's a true thing. And it actually said, it actually fessed up. It's like, yeah, we're not perfect. We're still under development. And this is a thing. So um, it is a huge problem and it is an issue.
Yeah, so how can we like ensure that the human awareness and ethical considerations keep pace with like this rapid advancements in powered artificial intelligence, like particularly in decision making like processes?
We just have to keep monitoring the output, and we have to proofread everything that we generate from AI. Human oversight, unfortunately, people are really lazy, and the amount of information that AI is cranking out, people aren't looking through it. But it's actually one of the things that I think that we can do. And also, I don't know what you're reading or what that source is that you're getting from, but I've actually heard that kind of information before. So it seems like a search that you might have pulled up or something like that. It sounds very
Yeah.
familiar, very, very familiar to me. But that kind of information, yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with all kinds of stuff now because I use the internet so much that what you're saying to me, like I heard that, I've seen that those exact kind of wording in certain searches and everything like that. Like I really do use this technology extensively, and that's where my criticism and analysis of it comes from, is because I find it to be very useful, but it can also be very misleading.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I've been like researching this like on articles and stuff, and it's kind of something that you kind of need to consider.
Cecilia Grace, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Just like so I was being a little bit more gentle about it, but I was like, when I said I've heard that information before, because early in the conversation I was saying I can tell when stuff is generated by AI, and so I was
Mhm.
kind of I was kind of tiptoeing around it. But then somebody just sent me a message that says he's using AI. I'm like, yeah, I know, I can tell. I mean, but again, I don't negatively judge that.
Yeah.
I can just tell. It's not always a bad thing. It's just I can tell because I can tell how
Yeah.
it's worded. I use it so much that I can tell how things are worded. I can tell how the AI presents information, and a lot of it's really good. Like even the book that I wrote that's called How to Use AI to Write a Book was
Mhm.
completely written by AI, and
Yeah.
everything inside the book is solid.
Yeah.
Like if somebody wanted to do that. So it's not bad. It's just that the only difference is, and I got to wrap it up with this, the
Hmm.
only thing that I think that we should do about this is just be transparent about stuff when it comes from AI, and then other people, we should just know the difference. We basically, the point is we should be training ourselves to know the difference. Like, yes, this came from AI and this came from a human. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll see all of my material is completely human generated stuff, like my stream of consciousness recordings, it's voice recordings and my transcripts right next to the AI generated stuff. So you can very clearly see the comparison of what's happening.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Hakeem.
All right, Kellen, you have a good night. And whoever either came through and sat a spell or passed through, it's awesome. And thank you, Daryl, also for coming up earlier. I do hope that I was able to clearly articulate where I'm coming from, which is basically, I think that one of the best ways, and I had some confirmation about this not too long ago from hearing Seth Godin talk about it. It's the author of the Perry Mason novels, Earl Stanley Gardner, who wrote millions of words a year, but really didn't write them. He dictated them to his secretaries, who then wrote them down and then published his books verbatim. That is what I think is what we should be doing. Use your human voice to generate the text from that and put your words out there, even if it's exactly as it is, unedited, with all your ums and hus and your second guessing and you're making your mistakes. All that needs to be put out there to level the playing field with a lot of the generic AI nonsense that's going on. It's a useful tool, but we need to be able to identify it. And when we're using it, we need to be transparent about it. And we need to use it in ways that is going to uplift us rather than hold us back. All right, got to go. Human awareness, powered artificial intelligence. Figure out how you can do that. Again, um, I urge you, because it's a lot of fun and it's very interesting deep dive. Go to HakeemAlexander.com, and the article is called Behind the Mic: How AI Powers Improvised Sci-Fi Podcasts and STEAM Learning.